It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I kind of want to start this podcast by saying I love Mondays, but today's pod is really Mrs. Happy Families having a rant, and I'm not sure how anyone's going to feel about Monday once they listen to this conversation. Kylie, you went to a meeting last week that has got stuck in your craw. What is a craw? Do you know what a craw is?
I don't know what a craw is. You use that word all the time.
Stuck in your craw. Got your goat.
Got my goat.
Yeah. Tell us about the meeting and why you're so wound up.
This is not my first rodeo when it comes to year 12 preparations. I almost didn't go, but I decided that to be fair,
to be supportive to our daughter who is commencing year 12.
Even though I've gone through it 3 times previous, she hasn't. So we went along and attended a meeting that I wish I hadn't have gone to.
Note, I didn't go. I said, I'll look after Emily. I'll stay home with the younger children who need supervision. You can go to the school. You can go to the meeting.
You're so kind.
I do my best. So what happened? Walk us through the challenge. You've come out. I want to use the word gruntled. No one's ever gruntled, have you? We're only ever disgruntled, and you come out disgruntled.
It's hard to know if this particular meeting was more pressure-filled than previous ones, or whether or not me seeing it through my particularly anxious Year 11 daughter's eyes impacted the way I received the information given. But what I find, generally speaking, in my 4 experiences, is this is an opportunity for teachers to kind of put the fear of God in these kids as they prepare for their final year of school. The idea that they have to work their bums off to the exclusion of everything else is probably one of the most damaging messages I could give my child.
So let's get something concrete around this. What precisely did you hear that was so challenging?
50,000 students will be dumped into the economy by the end of 2025.
Right. So at the end of next year, when our daughter is supposed to graduate from school, there'll be 50,000 kids that will leave school. Let me just pick up on that 50,000 thing before you go on. This happens every year.
It does.
Every state will release, tens of thousands. I guess New South Wales would be the highest state. I know they've got about 80,000 year 12 school leavers each year. So that happens every year, and the economy manages every year. We seem to be able to create more jobs. We've seemed to not really have any employment problems in this country. So I'm not convinced that that's a massive issue, but it certainly sounds stark and scary, doesn't it?
100%. If I'm a year 11 student and I hear a message like that, and I'm being told that I have to put my very best foot forward because there's going to be 50,000 people that are going to be vying for positions in my community.
So it's ultimately a scarcity mentality that says if you don't work, you'll miss out.
That's exactly right.
The problem with this as well is that not every student is going to go out and do the same thing. It's not 50,000 people competing for one university slot or one
But as a
job.
as a year 11 student, do you not think that that's kind of what I'm hearing? I'm actually competing for whatever it is that I want to do with 50,000 other people.
I just don't feel like society works like that. But clearly, your experience the other night was. Let's be clear as well. This is not about beating up on teachers and education staff. I often speak about the things that we're talking about now in schools, and I have principals and wellbeing leaders come up and almost hug me and say, "I'm so glad you said what you said because there's just too much pressure." But in our daughter's case, at this year 12 preparation night, it sounds like there was some pressure. What else was said?
I think a couple of things that really stood out to me was there seemed to be a push for a highly structured, highly study-focused lifestyle in Year 12 at the exclusion of a social life, spending time with our families, and even getting rid of part-time jobs. All of those things, or any one of those things, could be a positive in removing from the big picture of your child's life, depending on your family circumstances and your child's circumstances. How do they cope with stress? Do they actually need time outside of things? But to kind of put it in again in that context with the idea that your social life will be waiting for you at the other end, and that now is the time to basically work your bum off and focus on what matters most.
Which is getting a high ATAR.
I feel like it's a really damaging message. If I just kind of literally just do some crude maths here and put into a daily timetable what an average year 12 student's timetable would look like based on the recommendation of last week's meeting, we've got 1 to 2 hours of commute a day, whether you're catching a bus, you're doing the daily commute in a car, dealing with traffic. 1 to 2 hours, I think, is a fair average of what most people would be dealing with. You've got 7 hours at school. On top of that, they're now saying that they want a minimum of 3 hours study. So for a kid, again, who has high hopes of achieving well, they're not listening to the minimum, right? They don't want to do the minimum. They're going to do as much as they can. And then you have dinner, hopefully in there somewhere, and some meals. So all up, I've got 12 hours of absolutely structured time outside of any other things that they're going to do. How is that helpful, beneficial, or allowing our kids to live some kind of meaningful life?
Probably one of the central things that I'm picking up on here is that we've got a really heavy focus on this ATAR thing, right? And the pressure is, if you don't get this right, it's going to be to your detriment.
Well, that even came up, the acknowledgement that once upon a time, a university degree was free.
Free.
Absolutely free. We've gone from having a free education to having fee-helped education.
Yeah, I mean, our education in Australia is still reasonably cheap compared to many countries overseas, especially the US. But, yeah, I mean, it adds up.
And so the concept was brought up that if they didn't get things right, it was going to cost them more in the long run. If they, for instance, enroll in a course and decide halfway through the year or even at the end of the year, this isn't really what I want to do, they're going to accrue more costs as a result of the changes that they make.
Worried about that sort of stuff, but realistically, you put it on the fee help thing. Once you've got your HEX debt, I mean, we still call it a HEX debt or your help debt or whatever it is, it's indexed to inflation. But
it's not like America where I have to pay for my education up front.
You don't have to pay for it as well until you're earning a certain amount, and then it just gets deducted over the years. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. I don't want to discount the debt, but it's not that big of a debt. And if you die, it gets wiped. It's not like somebody else has to pay the debt for you. It's a pretty easy to manage kind of debt.
So I guess the big bee in my bonnet.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've got one.
The big bee in my bonnet is, with the literal pandemic that we're experiencing, I'm going to say across the world with mental illness, if you look at my 12 hours a day, I'm stuck in a classroom, I'm stuck at my desk, and I'm commuting. There's no joy factor in my day at all, let alone any time for mindfulness or really connecting with people that matter in my life. There's not even a place for recreation. Because if I look at this from 8 till 9, literally every day, I'm in structured classes. I'm in structured study. I'm in structured commute. Like there's no wriggle room.
My sense is that your central concern is actually unspoken, and that is that we've got a daughter who responds really poorly to pressure. She struggles with some anxiety sometimes, and that she came home and couldn't get to sleep until 1:30 because she was so stressed about the rest of her life if she doesn't do well over the next 12 months.
That is a huge part of this, but she's not the only one that heard that message. She's not the only one who's going to be dealing with this. And as I sat there and I listened, I knew exactly what I was going to have to come home to and what I'm going to have to deal with now for the next 12 months as she wrestles with trying to find the balance so that she can live a fulfilling, purposeful life.
I have some thoughts. Would you like to hear them?
Sure.
Let's go. First off, important to recognise that there's going to be a whole lot of parents who go home with their kids and the kids are going to shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, whatever. There'll be a dismissive tone in a portion of the audience. Another portion of the audience will go home and say, oh my goodness, it's on. What do we need to do? And they're going to carry that really, really heavily with them.
If that was me, in year 11, and I was told that there were 50,000 people vying for positions at the end of year 12. You've just lost me. I'm done. Like, there's not even a point in me trying, because how can one person compete against 50,000?
As a parent, I'm having a conversation that goes like this. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? Because you don't have to go to university. This is very much an ATAR-directed, university-focused conversation. We know that there are kids who go into apprenticeships or traineeships. We know that some of them will take a gap year. We know that some are going to go and join the military or
but that's not the conversation.
Do some volunteer service. No, and
that's not the conversation. The conversation is so much that there is one pathway, in spite of the fact that we mentioned that there's multiple pathways, there is one right pathway. That's what it feels like.
And this is the education industrial complex at its very worst, okay? It says that education is monolithic. There's only one way to success in life, and that way to success is that you have to have academic credentials. You've got to get a high ATAR, get into a challenging and competitive university course, dog eat dog world, be better than everybody else.
Oh, don't even get me started about dog eat dog world.
Oh.
The acknowledgement that as a school, our structure is all about unity, inclusiveness, and, kind of working together as a team until it comes to ATAR. And then he literally said, it's a dog eat dog world, and you need to do everything you can to get ahead.
So that's concerning, and it's almost like school culture doesn't matter when what really matters is results. And this is a cynical view on my part, but I really think that too many schools are using ATAR results as a marketing strategy to get more people to go to their schools because every parent's worried that the child's not going to do that well. To me, that's unconscionable. Moreover, I mean, you highlighted that with all the structure and all the study and all the work, kids can't have time together. You know what I found was when I was going through university, the most effective way for me to study was in groups. I'd sit down with my palm cards, I'd sit down with my study notes, and I'd say to 3 or 4 other people, hey, let's go through these together. And we would quiz each other. And what a difference that made. It became some of the most valuable social time that we had.
The challenge we have, though, is we're dealing with year 11 students as opposed to a mature age university student who knows what he wants to do and is there for the right reasons.
I want to highlight 2 other things before we talk about the conversation that needs to be had. And we've got to do this fairly quickly because your frustrations, your bee in your bonnet has taken up a lot of time for this podcast. I want to emphasize that we elevate university and we should not be doing that. It's just not the only way for somebody to have a successful life. When I ask parents how many of them are doing today what they thought they would do when they finished high school, less than 1 in 10 put up their hand in my workshops. Moreover, there are so many people who do things that don't require university degrees where they make fabulous contributions to society. They make more than enough to support their families and make a contribution in whatever way they wish to. It's not like university is it. I want to use our son-in-law, Jared, as an example. He was a terrible school student. He had no academic aspirations and really still doesn't. And after floundering for a couple of years after school, he got an electrical trade. He's now a fully qualified electrician. And at the age of, 25, 26, something like that, he and our daughter have just bought their first house on the Sunshine Coast. And it's a house, it's got a pool and a double garage. It's incredible. And he's 25. I don't know too many university graduates who at 25 are buying their family a home. He's married, he's got a child, and he's doing so well. And he's a tradie. And just recently, he and a few of his friends were at our place doing a little bit of work on our home. And there's all these mid-20s guys, and they're living great lives. They're financially secure. They've got a trade. They're doing work that they really do enjoy. And I just thought to myself, why is it that we elevate university so inappropriately? It's not the only way to make a living.
Because I actually think we value money.
It's not money that we value. It's status. Okay, because we've got all these people who are in trades or who are entrepreneurial and running their own businesses, but we as a society value status, and you get status from university that you don't get from other places, especially if you do a particular kind of degree versus a different kind of degree. I just want to hammer this point as hard as I can. You look at the latest stats on university dropouts in first year. As a former university lecturer, I've made this point many times. Around about 80% of the kids who are doing first year uni probably shouldn't be there. I just don't think that they need to be at university. There's a 25% dropout rate in first year university students around Australia at the moment. The ATAR, this is fascinating. The ATAR is predictive of whether or not you will or will not make it through first year university. The Centre for Independent Studies released a report not too long ago. And in their findings, they said that the ATAR is significantly associated with completions and attrition. With each ascending ATAR band, completions rise and attrition falls. Low ATAR students, that is students who score in the bottom 60, 0 to 60, their dropout rates are 3 times that of high ATAR students, between 80 and 100. Also, non-ATAR-based admissions are almost twice as likely as ATAR-based admissions to drop out of university in their first year, and completion rates fall faster for non-ATAR-based admissions than any other ATAR band. Nevertheless, we can't confuse causation with correlation. What's really going on here, I think, is you've got a whole bunch of... Last week on the podcast, we talked about self-control being the performance-enhancing drug, right? And what we're really seeing here, I don't think that it's ATARs that are truly the thing that's making kids stick with or drop out of university. What I think it is self-control. The other thing that I'd highlight, just to wrap this up, I guess, is that kids don't need to be doing 3 hours of study a night on top of their regular schoolwork, on top of a full school day, as well as trying to balance friendships and family commitments and maybe a part-time job. At university, if you score 85 or above, you get a high distinction, right? That means your work is highly distinctive. To get 85% or above, in very crude terms, when I talk to our kids about this, I just say, if you want to get 85 or above, you need to be highly distinctive. What is it from a workload point of view that would make you highly distinctive? How much time are most people spending on this? So on average, they might say, oh yeah, it's an hour. And I'll say, okay, so would 2 hours make you highly distinctive? Would 90 minutes make you highly distinctive? At what point does the work that you put in make you highly distinctive? Because there is a dose response when it comes to the work you put in and the result you get back. And so if everyone who's listening to this can get their children to work in a highly distinctive manner, that is, to recognize that the higher the dose they put in, the greater the response they get back to a point, then their kids will end up highly distinctive. They'll get 85 and above. They'll be different to everybody else. Ultimately, though, my take on your rant and your frustration, which is, I think, completely appropriate. And I don't mind saying this, even though our kids go to the school and maybe there are people at the school who listen. This is something that happens universally. This is not just a specific school.
And I agree with that. I mean, each of the times we've done this, it's been at a different school with a different child.
Yeah.
And the message has been ultimately the same. I recognize that with time restraints and trying to get through a message, ultimately what they're saying is, give it your best shot, do everything you can to get a good grade because it matters. And they're right.
Well, yes, if it matters. If it matters.
What they didn't talk about was the importance of connection and family time and spending time with people who elevate you and ground you. They didn't talk about, kind of mindfulness and taking time out and away from the books. A couple of years ago, I attended a conference. They had classes from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. on the hour, every hour. I had multiple options. It was mind-blowing and I loved every minute of it. But by the end of each day, my brain was absolutely fried and I couldn't even really tell you what I had listened to until I looked at my notes. There was so much information. We need to give them an opportunity to breathe, for goodness sakes.
So here's how we do that. It's a 3 EAS conversation at the start of year 11 where we say, hey, what's important to you? We explore, right? What's important to you educationally? We explain. We explain by saying, the more you put in over the next 2 years, the better your results will be. And the better your results are, the more opportunities you'll have later in life, particularly if you have tertiary aspirations or even entrepreneurial aspirations. And then we empower. We say, so based on what you want, what we've explained, what is it that we're going to work towards and how can we support you? Now, if you do that, your kids are going to do better. You'll have some children who say, parents, I want 99.95. I want to be doing medicine or law or dentistry or one of those other high ATAR subjects. And therefore, what I would find most supportive is if I can quit my job and if you'll support me over the next 2 years so that I can study 14 hours a day. You will have some kids that do that. And if that's what they want and you're happy to support them, then go for it. And you'll have other kids that shrug their shoulders and say, I don't really know what I want. I don't even know if I want to go to uni. At which point you say, great. Well, how do we help you to maximize and have value in these next 2 years so that you have optionality at the end of it without busting a boiler and without us all losing the plot? And as you work through that strategy and that plan, your kids are going to be okay.
I just wish more schools would take on that approach, then hoping that they're putting a fire under kids and motivating them by telling them that they have to do the very best that they can. What does their best look like?
You feel better now?
Maybe.
Take a few deep breaths. We'll be fine. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rollin for Bridge Media. If you'd like more information about how to support your kids and make your family happier, you'll find it on our Facebook and Instagram pages or at happyfamilies.com.au.